Day 6, 4:12 p.m. Beneath the corrugated roof, the air was hot and still. The line of cars stretched away from us. I heard the roar of a video camera motor up by the roof. Ricky must have seen us coming out on the monitor. Static hissed in my headset. Ricky said, "What the hell's going on?" "Nothing good," I said. Beyond the line of shade, the afternoon sun was still bright. "Where are the others?" Ricky said. Is everybody okay?" "No, everybody is not." "Well, tell me." "Not now." In retrospect, we were all numb from what had happened. We didn't have any reaction except to try and get to safety. The lab building stood across the desert, 100 yards to our right. We could reach the power station door in 30 or 40 seconds. We set off toward it at a brisk jog. Ricky was still talking, but we didn't answer him. We were all thinking about the same thing. In another half a minute, we would reach the door and safety. But we had forgotten the fourth swarm. "Oh, fuck," Charlie said. The fourth swarm swirled out from the side of the lab building and started straight toward us. We stopped, confused. "What do we do?" May said. "Flock?" "No," I shook my head. "There's only 3 of us. We were too small a group to confuse a predator." But I couldn't think of any other strategy to try. All the predator-prey studies I had ever read began to play back in my head. Those studies agreed on one thing. Whether you modeled warrior ants or Serengeti lions, the studies confirmed one major dynamic. Left to their own devices, predators would kill all the prey until none remained, unless there was a prey refuge. In real life, the prey refuge might be a nest in a tree, or an underground den, or a deep pool in a river. If the prey had a refuge, they'd survive. Without a refuge, the predators would kill them all. "I think we're fucked," Charlie said. We needed a refuge. The swarm was bearing down on us. I could almost feel the pinpricks on my skin and taste the dry, ashen taste in my mouth. We had to find some kind of shelter before the swarm reached us. I turned full circle, looking in all directions, but there was nothing I could see except... Are the cars locked? My headset crackled. No, they shouldn't be. We turned and ran. The nearest car was a blue Ford sedan. I opened the driver's door, and May opened the passenger side. The swarm was right behind us. I could hear the thrumming sound as I slammed the door shut. As May slammed hers, Charlie, still holding the Windex spray, was trying to open the rear passenger door. But it was locked. May twisted in the seat to unlock the door, but Charlie had already turned to the next car, a Land Cruiser, and climbed inside, and slammed the door. "Yeah," he said. "Fucking hot." "I know," I said. The inside of the car was like an oven. May and I were both sweating. The swarm rushed toward us. and swirled over the front windshield, pulsating, shifting back and forth. Over the headset, a panicked Ricky said, "Guys, where are you guys?" "We're in the cars." "Which cars?" "What fucking difference does it make?" Charlie said. "We're in 2 of the fucking cars, Ricky." The black swarm moved away from our sedan, over to the Toyota. We watched as it slid from one window to another, trying to get in. Charlie grinned at me through the glass. It's not like the shed. These cars are airtight. So fuck 'em." "What about the air vents?" I said. "I shut mine." "But they aren't airtight, are they?" "No," he said. "But you'd have to go under the hood to begin to get in. Or maybe through the trunk. And I'm betting this overbred buzzball can't figure that out." Inside our car, May was snapping closed the dashboard air ducts, one after another. She opened the glove compartment, glanced inside, shut it again. I said, "You find any keys?" She shook her head no. Over the headset, Ricky said, "Guys, you got more company." I turned to see 2 additional swarms coming around the shed. They immediately swirled over our car, front and back. I felt like we were in a dust storm. I looked at May. She was sitting very still, stony-faced, just watching. The 2 new clouds finished circling the car, then came to the front. One was positioned just outside May's passenger door window. It pulsed, glinting silver. The other was on the hood of the car, moving back and forth from May to me. From time to time, it would rush the windshield and disperse itself over the glass. Then it would coalesce again, back away down the hood, and rush again. Charlie cackled gleefully. "Trying to get in. I told you, they can't do it." I wasn't so sure. I noticed that with each charge, the swarm would move farther back down the hood, taking a longer run. Soon it would back itself up to the front grille, and if it started inspecting the grille, it could find the opening to the air vents, and then it would be over. May was rummaging in the utility compartment between the seats. She came up with a roll of tape and a box of plastic sandwich baggies. She said, "Maybe we can tape the vents." I shook my head. "There's no point," I said. "They're nanoparticles. They're small enough to pass right through a membrane." "You mean they'd come through the plastic? Or around through small cracks? You can't seal it well enough to keep them out." "Then we just sit here?" "Basically, yes." "And hope they don't figure it out." I nodded. "That's right." Over the headset, Bobby Lembeck said, "Wind's starting to pick up again, 6 knots. It sounded like he was trying to be encouraging, but 6 knots wasn't anywhere near enough force. The swarms outside the windshield moved effortlessly around the car. Charlie said, "Jack, I just lost my buzz ball. Where is it?" I looked over at Charlie's car and saw that the 3rd swarm had slid down to the front tire well. where it was swirling in circles and moving in and out through the holes in the hubcap. "Checking your head hubcaps, Charlie," I said. He sounded unhappy, and with good reason. If the swarm started exploring the car thoroughly, it might stumble on a way in. He said, "I guess the question is, how big is their SO components really?" "That's right," I said. May said, in English. I explained the swarms had no leader and no central intelligence. Their intelligence was the sum of the individual particles. Those particles self-organized into a swarm, and their self-organizing tendencies had unpredictable results. You really didn't know what they would do. The swarms might continue to be ineffective as they were now. They might come upon the solution by chance, or they might start searching in an organized way. But they hadn't done that so far. My clothes were heavy, soaked in sweat. Sweat was dripping from my nose and chin. I wiped my forehead with the back of my arm. I looked at May. She was sweating too. Ricky said, "Hey, Jack." "What?" "Julia called a while ago. She's checked out of the hospital and—" "Not now, Ricky. She's coming out here tonight. We'll talk later, Ricky. I just thought you'd want to know." "Jesus," Charlie said, exploding. "Someone tell this asshole to shut up. We are busy." Bobby Lembeck said, 8 knots of wind now. No, sorry, 7. Charlie said, "Jesus, the suspense is killing me." "Where's my swarm now, Jack?" "Under the car. I can't see what it's doing." "No, wait. It's coming up behind you, Charlie. Looks like it's checking out your tail lights." "Some kind of car freak," he said. "Well, it can check any away." I was looking over my shoulder at Charlie's swarm when May said, "Jack, look." The swarm outside her window on the passenger side had changed. It was almost entirely silver now, shimmering, but pretty stable. And on this silver surface, I saw May's head and shoulders reflected back. The reflection wasn't perfect, because her eyes and mouth were slightly blurred, but basically it was accurate. I frowned. "It's a mirror." "No," she said, "it's not." She turned away from the window to look at me. Her image on the silver surface did not change. The face continued to stare into the car. Then after a moment or two, the image shivered, dissolved, and reformed to show the back of her head. "What does that mean?" May said. "I've got a pretty good idea, but—" The swarm on the front hood was doing the same thing, except that its silver surface showed the two of us sitting side by side in the car, looking very frightened. Again, the image was somewhat blurred. And now it was clear to me that the swarm was not a literal mirror. The swarm itself was generating the image by the precise positioning of individual particles, which meant— "Bad news," Charlie said. "I know," I said. "They're innovating." "What do you figure? Is it one of the presets?" "Basically, yes. I assume it's imitation." May shook her head, not understanding. The program presets certain strategies to help attain goals. The strategies model what real predators do. So one preset strategy is to freeze, where you are, and wait to ambush. Another is to random walk until you stumble on your prey, and then pursue. A third is to camouflage yourself by taking on some element of the environment, so you blend in. And the fourth is to mimic the prey's behavior, to imitate it. She said, "You think this is imitation?" "I think this is a form of imitation, yes." "It's trying to make itself appear like us, yes." "This is emergent behavior. It's evolved on its own." "Yes," I said. "Bad news," Charlie said mournfully. Bad news." Sitting in the car, I started to get angry, because what the mirror imaging meant to me was that I didn't know the real structure of the nanoparticles. I'd been told there was a piezo wafer that would reflect light, so it wasn't surprising that the swarms occasionally flashed silver in the sun. That didn't call for a sophisticated orientation of the particles. In fact, you would expect that sort of silvery ripple as a random effect, just the way heavily trafficked highways will clog up and then flow freely again. The congestion was caused by random speed changes from one or two motorists, but the effect rippled down the entire highway. The same would be true of the swarms. A chance effect would pass like a wave down the swarm. And that's what we had seen. But this mirroring behavior was something entirely different. The swarms were now producing images in color and holding them fairly stable. Such complexity wasn't possible from the simple nanoparticle I'd been shown. I doubted you could generate a full spectrum from a silver layer. It was theoretically possible that the silver could be precisely tilted to produce prismatic colors, but that implied enormous sophistication of movement. It was more logical to imagine that the particles had another method to create color, and that meant I hadn't been told the truth about the particles either. Ricky had lied to me yet again. So I was angry. I had already concluded something was wrong with Ricky, and in retrospect, the problem lay with me, not him. Even after the debacle in the storage shed, I still failed to grasp that the swarms were evolving faster than our ability to keep pace with them. I should have realized what I was up against when the swarms demonstrated a new strategy, making the floor slippery to disable their prey and to move them among ants. That would be called collective transport. The phenomenon was well known, but for these swarms, it was unprecedented, newly evolved behavior. Yet at the time, I was too horrified to recognize its true significance. Now, sitting in the hot car, it wasn't useful to blame Ricky, but I was scared and tired, and I wasn't thinking clearly. Jack May nudged my shoulder and pointed to Charlie's car. Her face was grim. The swarm by the taillight of Charlie's car was now a black stream that curved high in the air and then disappeared in the seam where the red plastic joined the metal. Over the headset, I said, "Hey, Charlie, I think it's found a way." "Yeah, I see it. Fuck a duck." Charlie was scrambling into the back seat. Already particles were beginning to fill the inside of the car, making a gray fog that rapidly darkened. Charlie coughed. I couldn't see what he was doing. He was down below the window. He coughed again. "Charlie." He didn't answer, but I heard him swearing. "Charlie, you better get out. Fuck these guys." And then there was an odd sound, which at first I couldn't place. I turned to May, who was pressing her headset to her ear. It was a strange rhythmic rasping. She looked at me questioningly. "Charlie, I'm spray these little bastards. Let's see how they do when they're wet." May said, "You're spraying the isotope?" He didn't answer. But a moment later, he appeared in the window again, spraying in all directions with a Windex bottle. Liquid streaked across the glass and dripped down. The interior of the car was growing darker as more and more particles entered. Soon we couldn't see him at all. His hand emerged from the black, pressed against the glass, then disappeared again. He was coughing continuously, a dry cough. "Charlie," I said, "run for it." "Ah, fuck, what's the point?" Bobby Lembeck said, "Wind's 10 knots, go for it." 10 knots wasn't enough, but it was better than nothing. "Charlie, you hear?" We heard his voice from the black interior. "Yeah, okay. I'm looking. Can't find fucking door handle. Can't feel." "Where's the goddamn door handle on this?" He broke into a spasm of coughing. Over the headset, I heard voices inside the lab, all speaking rapidly. Ricky said, "He's in the Toyota." "Where's the handle in the Toyota?" Bobby Lembeck, "I don't know. It's not my car." "Whose car is it?" "Vince." "Vince? No. It's that guy with the bad eyes." "Who? The engineer?" "The guy who blinks all the time." "David Brooks?" "Yeah, him." Ricky said, "Guys, we think it's David's car." I said, "That's not going to do us any." And then I broke off, because Meg was pointing behind her to the back seat of our car. From the seam where the seat cushion met the back, particles were hissing into the car like black smoke. I looked closer and saw a blanket on the floor of the back seat. May saw it too, and threw herself bodily into the back. Diving between the seats, she kicked me in the head as she went. But she had the blanket and began stuffing it into the crack. My headset came off and caught on the steering wheel as I tried to climb back to help her. It was cramped in the car. I heard a tiny voice from the earpieces. "Come on," May said. "Come on." I was bigger than she was. There wasn't room for me back there. My body jackknifed over the driver's seat as I grabbed the blanket and helped her stuff it. I was vaguely aware that the passenger door banged open on the Toyota, and I saw Charlie's foot emerge from the black. He was going to try his luck outside. Maybe we should too, I thought, as I helped her with the blanket. The blanket wouldn't do any good. It was just a delaying tactic. Already, I sensed the particles were sifting right through the cloth. The car was continuing to fill. The air was getting darker and darker. I felt the pinpricks all over my skin. "May, let's run." She didn't answer. She just kept pushing the blanket harder into the cracks. Probably she knew we'd never make it if we went outside. The swarms would run us down, get in our path, make us slip and fall. And once we fell, they would suffocate us, just as they did to the others. The air was thicker. I started to cough. In the semi-darkness, I kept hearing a tiny voice from the headset. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. May's headset had fallen off too, and I thought I had seen it on the front seat. But now it was becoming too dark to see. My eyes burned. I coughed continuously. May was coughing too. I didn't know if she was still stuffing the blanket. She was just a shadow in the fog. I squeezed my eyes against the sharp pain. My throat was tightening, and my cough was dry. I felt dizzy again. I knew we couldn't survive more than a minute or so, perhaps less. I looked back at May, but couldn't see her. I heard her coughing. I waved my hand, trying to clear the fog so I could see her. It didn't work. I waved my hand in front of the windshield, and it cleared momentarily. Despite my fit of coughing, I saw the lab in the distance. The sun was shining. Everything looked normal. It was infuriating that it should appear so normal and peaceful while we coughed ourselves to death. I couldn't see what happened to Charlie. He wasn't in front of me anywhere. In fact, I waved my hand again. All I saw was blowing sand. Jesus, blowing sand? The wind was back up. May, I coughed. May, the door. I don't know if she heard me. She was coughing hard. I reached for the driver's side door, fumbling for the handle. I felt confused and disoriented. I was coughing continuously. I touched hot metal, jerked it down. The door swung open beside me. Hot desert air rushed in, swirling the fog. The wind had definitely come up. May. She was racked with coughing. Perhaps she couldn't move. I lunged for the passenger door opposite me. My ribs banged on the gear shift. The fog was thinner now, and I saw the handle, twisted it, and shoved the door open. It banged shut in the wind. I pushed forward, twisted, shoved it open again, holding it open with my hand. Wind blew through the car. The black cloud vanished in a few seconds. The back seat was still dark. I crawled forward, out the passenger door, and opened the back door. She reached to me, and I hauled her out. We were both coughing hard. Her legs buckled. I threw her arm over my shoulder and half carried her out into the open desert. Even now, I don't know how I made it back to the laboratory building. The swarms had vanished. The wind was blowing hard. May was a dead weight on my shoulders, her body limp, her feet dragging over the sand. I had no energy. I was racked with spasms of coughing, which often forced me to stop. I couldn't get my breath. I was dizzy, disoriented. The glare of the sun had a greenish tinge, and I saw spots before my eyes. May was coughing weakly, her breath shallow. I had the feeling she wouldn't survive. I trudged on, putting one foot ahead of the other. Somehow the door loomed in front of me, and I got it open. I brought May into the black outer room. On the other side of the glass airlock, Ricky and Bobby Lembeck were writing. They were cheering us on, but I couldn't hear them. My headset was back in the car. The airlock doors hissed open, and I got May inside. She managed to stand, though she was doubled over coughing. I stepped away. The wind began to blow her clean. I leaned against the wall, out of breath, dizzy. I thought, haven't I done this before? I looked at my watch. It was just 3 hours since I had narrowly escaped the last attack. I bent over and put my hands on my knees. I stared at the floor and waited for the airlock to become free. I glanced over at Ricky and Bobby. They were yelling, pointing to the ears. I shook my head. Couldn't they see I didn't have a headset? I said, "Where's Charlie?" They answered, but I couldn't hear them. "Did he make it? Where's Charlie?" I winced at a harsh electronic squeal. And then over the intercom, Ricky said, "Not much you can do." "Is he here?" I said. "Did he make it?" "No." "Where is he?" "Back at the car," Ricky said. "He never got out of the car. Didn't you know?" "I was busy," I said. "So he's back there?" "Yeah." "Is he dead?" No, he's alive." I was still breathing hard, still dizzy. "What?" "It's hard to tell on the video monitor, but it looks like he's alive." "Then why the fuck don't you guys go get him?" Ricky's voice was calm. "We can't, Jack. We have to take care of May. Someone here could go. We don't have anyone to spare." "I can't go," I said. "I'm in no shape to go." "Of course not," Ricky said, turning on his soothing voice. The Undertaker's voice. "All this must be a terrible shock to you, Jack. All you've gone through. Just tell me, who's going to get him, Ricky?" "To be brutally honest," Ricky said, "I don't think there's any point. He had a convulsions, a bad one. I don't think he has much left." I said, "Nobody's going?" I'm afraid there's no point, Jack. Inside the airlock, Bobby was helping May out and leading her down the corridor. Ricky was standing there, watching me through the glass. Your turn, Jack. Come on in. I didn't move. I stayed leaning against the wall. I said, somebody has to go get him. Not right now. The wind isn't stable, Jack. It'll fall again any minute. But he's alive. Not for long. Somebody has to go, I said. Jack, you know as well as I do what we're up against, Ricky said. He was doing the voice of reason now, calm and logical. We've had terrible losses. We can't risk anybody else. By the time somebody gets to Charlie, he'll be dead. He may be dead already. Come on and get in the airlock. I was taking stock of my body, feeling my breathing, my chest, my deep fatigue. I couldn't go back out right now, not in the condition I was in. So I got into the airlock. With a roar, the blowers flattened my hair, flooded my clothes, and cleaned the black particles from my clothes and skin. My vision just improved almost immediately. I breathed easier. Now they were blowing upward. I held out my hand and saw it turn from black to pale gray, then to normal flesh color again. Now the blows came from the sides. I took a deep breath. The pinpricks were no longer so painful on my skin. Either I was feeling them less, or they were being blown off my skin. My head cleared a little. I took another breath. I didn't feel good, but I felt better. The glass doors opened. Ricky held out his arms. Jack, thank God you're safe. I didn't answer him. I just turned around and went back the way I had come. Jack. The glass doors whished shut and locked with a thunk. I'm not leaving him out there, I said. What are you going to do? You can't carry him. He's too big. What are you going to do? I don't know, but I'm not leaving him behind, Ricky. And I went back outside. Of course I was doing exactly what Ricky wanted. Exactly what he expected me to do. But I didn't realize it at the time. And even if somebody had told me, I wouldn't have credited Ricky with that degree of psychological sophistication. Ricky was pretty obvious in the way he managed people, but this time he got me. Day 6, 4:22 p.m. The wind was blowing briskly. There was no sign of the swarms, and I crossed to the shed without incident. I didn't have a headset, so I was spared Ricky's commentary. The back passenger door of the Toyota was open. I found Charlie lying on his back, motionless. It took me a moment to see he was still breathing, although shallowly. With an effort, I managed to pull him into a sitting position. He stared at me with dull eyes. His lips were blue and his skin was chalky gray. A tear ran down his cheek. His mouth moved. Don't try to talk, I said. Save your energy. Grunting, I pulled him over to the edge of the seat by the door and strung his legs around so he was facing out. Charlie was a big guy, 6 feet tall and at least 20 pounds, heavier than I was. I knew I couldn't carry him back, but behind the back seat of the Toyota, I saw the fat tires of a dirt bike. That might work. Charlie, can you hear me? An almost imperceptible nod. Can you stand up? Nothing. No reaction. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring into space. Charlie, I said, do you think you can stand? He nodded again, then straightened his body so he slid off the seat and landed on the ground. He stood shakily for a moment, his legs trembling, and then he collapsed against me, clutching me to hold himself up. I sagged under his weight. Okay, Charlie. I eased him back to the car and sat him down on the running board. Just stay there, okay? I let go of him, and he remained sitting. He still stared into space, unfocused. I'll be right back. I went around to the back of the Land Cruiser and popped the trunk. There was a dirt bike. All right, the cleanest dirt bike I had ever seen. It was encased in a heavy mylar bag, and it had been wiped down after it was used. That would be David's way, I thought. He was always so clean, so organized. I pulled the bike out of the car and set it on the ground. There was no key in the ignition. I went to the front of the Toyota and opened the passenger door. The front seats were spotless and carefully ordered. David had one of those suction cup notepads on the dashboard, a cradle for a cell phone, and a telephone headset mounted on a little hook. I opened his glove box and saw that the interior was neatly arranged too. Registration papers in an envelope beneath a small plastic tray divided into compartments containing lip balm, Kleenex, Band-Aids. No keys. Then I noticed that between the seats there was a storage box for the CD player, and beneath it was a locked tray. It had the same kind of lock as the ignition. It probably opened with the ignition key. I banged the tray with the heel of my hand and heard something metallic rattle inside. It might have been a small key, like a dirt bike key. Anyway, something metal. Where were David's keys? I wondered if Vince had taken David's keys away on arrival as he had taken mine. If so, then the keys were in the lab. That wouldn't do me any good. I looked towards the lab building, wondering if I should go back to get them. That was when I noticed that the wind was blowing less strongly. There was still a layer of sand blowing along the ground, but it was less vigorous. Great, I thought. That's all I need now. Feeling new urgency, I decided to give up on the dirt bike and its missing key. Perhaps there was something in the storage shed that I could use to move Charlie back to the lab. I didn't remember anything, but I went into the shed to check anyway. I entered cautiously, hearing a banging sound. It turned out to be the far door, banging open and shut in the wind. Rosie's body lay just inside the door, alternately light and dark as the door banged. She had the same milky coating on her skin that the rabbit had had, but I didn't go over to look closely. I hastily searched the shelves, opened the utility closet, looked behind stacked boxes. I found a furniture dolly made of wooden slats with small rollers, but it would be useless in sand. I went back outside under the corrugated shed and hurried to the Toyota. There was nothing to do but to try to carry Charlie across the lab building. I might be able to manage it if he could support part of his own right. Maybe by now he was feeling better, I thought. Maybe he was stronger. But one look at his face told me he wasn't. If anything, he appeared weaker. Shit, Charlie. What am I going to do with you? He didn't answer. I can't carry you. And David didn't leave any keys in his car, so we're out of luck. I stopped. What if David were locked out of his car? He was an engineer. He thought of contingencies like that. Even if it was unlikely to happen, David would never be caught unprepared. He'd never be flagging down cars, asking if they had a wire hanger he could borrow. No. David would have hidden a key, probably in one of those magnetic key boxes. I started to lie down on my back to look underneath the car. When it occurred to me that David would never get his clothes dirty just to retrieve the key. He'd hide it cleverly, but within easy reach. With that in mind, I ran my fingers along the inside of the front bumpers. Nothing. I went to the back bumper, did the same. Nothing. I felt under the running boards on both sides of the car. Nothing. No magnetic box, no key. I couldn't believe it, so I got down and looked under the car to see if there was a brace or strut I had somehow missed with my fingers. No, there wasn't. I felt no key. I shook my head, puzzled. The hiding place needed to be steel for the magnetic box, and it needed to be protected from the elements. That was why almost everybody hid their keys inside the car bumpers. David hadn't done that. Where else could you hide a key? I walked around the car again, looking at the smooth lines of the metal. I ran my fingers around the front grille opening and under the back license plate indentation. No key. I started to sweat. It wasn't only the tension. By now, I could definitely feel the drop in the wind. I went back to Charlie, who was still sitting on the sideboard. "How you doing, Charlie?" He didn't answer, just gave a little shrug. I took his headset off and put it on. I heard static and voices, talking softly. It sounded like Ricky and Bobby, and it sounded like an argument. I pulled the mouthpiece near my lips and said, "Guys, speak to me." A pause. Bobby surprised. "Jack?" "That's right. Jack, you can't stay there. The wind's been falling steadily for the last few minutes. It's only 10 knots now. Okay. Jack, you've got to come back in. I can't just yet. Below 7 knots, the swarms can move. Okay." Ricky, "What do you mean, okay? Jesus, Jack. Are you coming in or not? I can't carry Charlie. You knew that when you went out." "Uh-huh." "Jack, what the hell are you doing?" I heard the whirl of the video monitor in the corner of the shed. I looked over the roof of the car and saw the lens rotate as they zoomed in on me. The Toyota was such a big car. It almost blocked my view of the camera, and the ski rack on top made it even higher. I vaguely wondered why David had a ski rack. Because he didn't ski. He always hated cold. The rack must have come with the car as standard equipment, and I swore. It was so obvious. There was only one place I hadn't checked. I jumped up on the running board and looked at the roof of the car. I ran my fingers over the ski rack and along the parallel tracks bolted to the roof. My fingers touched black tape against the black rack. I pulled the tape away and saw a silver key. "Jack, 9 knots. Okay." I dropped back down to the ground and climbed in the driver's seat. I put the key in the lock box and twisted it. The box opened. Inside, I found a small yellow key. "Jack, what are you doing?" I hurried around to the back of the car. I fitted the yellow key in the ignition. I started the bike and started up. The motor rumbled loudly under the corrugated shed. "Jack." I walked the bike around the side of the car to where Charlie was sitting. That was going to be the tricky part. The bike didn't have a kickstand. I moved as close to Charlie as I could, and then tried to support him enough that he could climb onto the back seat while I still sat on the bike, and kept it up. Right. Fortunately, he seemed to understand what I was doing. I got him in place and told him to hold on to me. "Bobby Lembeck, Jack, they're here." "Where?" "South side, coming towards you." Okay. I gunned the motor and pulled the passenger door shut, and I stayed exactly where I was. "Jack, Ricky, what's the matter with him? He knows what the danger is." "Bobby, I know. He's just sitting there." Charlie had his hands around my waist. His head was on my shoulder. I could hear his raspy breathing. I said, "Hold tight, Charlie." He nodded. "Ricky, Jack, what are you doing?" Then at my ear, in a voice just above a whisper, Charlie said, "Fucking idiot." Yes, I nodded. I waited. I could see the swarms now, coming around the building. This time there were 9 swarms, and they headed straight for me in a V formation. Their own flocking behavior. 9 swarms? I thought. Soon there would be 30 swarms, and then 200. Bobby, Jack, do you see them? I see them. Of course, I saw them. And of course, they were different from before. They were denser now. The columns thicker and more substantial. Those swarms didn't weigh 3 pounds anymore. I sensed they were closer to 10 or 20 pounds. Maybe even more than that. Maybe 30 pounds. They would have real weight now and real substance. I waited. I stayed where I was. Some detached part of my brain was wondering what the formation would do when it reached me. Would they circle me? Would some of the swarms hang back and wait? What did they make of the noisy bike? Nothing. They came right for me, flattening the V into a line, then into a kind of inverted V. I could hear the deep vibrating hum. With so many swarms, it was much louder. The swirling columns were 20 yards away from me, then 10. Were they able to move faster now, or was it my imagination? I waited until they were almost upon me before I twisted the throttle and raced forward. I passed straight through the lead swarm, into the blackness and out again. And then I was gunning for the power station door, bouncing over the desert, not daring to look back over my shoulder. It was a wild ride, and it only lasted a few seconds. As we reached the power station, I dropped the bike, put my shoulder under Charlie's arm, and staggered the final step or two to the door. The swarms were still 50 yards away from the door when I managed to turn the knob, pull, get one foot in the crack, and kick the door open the rest of the way. When I did that, I lost my balance, and Charlie and I more or less fell through the door onto the concrete. The door came swinging shut and ranged into our legs, which hung outside. I felt a sharp pain in my ankles, but worse. The door was still open, kept ajar by our legs. Through the opening, I could see the swarms approaching. I scrambled to my feet and dragged Charlie's inert body into the room. The door wouldn't shut completely behind us, but remained open a crack. Even though I yanked it a couple of times, trying to get it closed. But there must have been dirt in the jam. I gave it up. I had to get both of us into the airlock. We wouldn't be safe until the first step of glass doors had hissed shut. Grunting and sweating, I hauled Charlie into the airlock. I caught him into a sitting position, propped up against the side blowers. That cleared his feet of the glass doors. And because only one person could be in the airlock at a time, I stepped back outside and waited for the doors to close. But they didn't close. I looked on the side wall for some sort of button, but I didn't see anything. The lights were on inside the airlocks, so it was getting power, but the doors didn't close. And I knew the swarms were fast approaching. Bobby Lembeck and May came running into the doors. They were waving their arms, making big gestures. apparently indicating for me to come back into the airlock. But that didn't make sense. Into my headset, I said, I thought you had to go one at a time. They didn't have headsets and couldn't hear me. They were waving frantically, come in, come in. I held up 2 fingers questioningly. They shook their heads. They seemed to be indicating I was missing the point. At my feet, I saw the nanoparticles begin to come into the room, like black steam. They were coming through the edges of the fire door. I had only 5 or 10 seconds now. I slipped back into the airlock. Bobby and May were nodding, approving, but the doors did not close. Now they were making other gestures. Lifting. You want me to lift Charlie? They did. I shook my head. Charlie was slumped there in a sitting position, a dead weight on the ground. I looked back at the ant room and saw it was filling with black particles, starting to form a grayish mist in the air. The grayish mist was coming into the airlock as well. I felt the first tiny pinpricks on my skin. I looked at Bobby and May on the other side of the glass. They could see what was happening. They knew only seconds remained. They were again making gestures. Lift Charlie up. I bent over him, got my hands under his armpits. I tried to haul him to his feet, but he didn't budge. Charlie, for God's sake, help! Groaning, I tried again. Charlie kicked his legs and pushed with his arms, and I got him a couple of feet off the ground. Then he settled back down. Charlie, come on, once more. I pulled up as hard as I could, and this time he helped a lot, and we got his legs back under him, and with a final heave, got him standing. I kept my hands under his armpits. We were in a kind of crazy lover's clench. Charlie was wheezing. I looked back to the glass doors. The doors didn't close. The air was getting blacker all the time. I looked to May and Bobby, and they were frantic, holding up 2 fingers, shaking them at me. I didn't get it. Yes, there's 2 of us. What was wrong with the damn doors? Finally, May bent over and very deliberately pointed with 1 finger of each hand to her 2 shoes. I saw her mouth, 2 shoes, and point to Charlie. Yeah, we have 2 shoes. He's standing on 2 shoes. May shook her head. She held up 4 fingers, 4 shoes. The pinpricks were irritating, making it difficult to think. I felt the old confusion begin to seep over me. My brain felt sluggish. What did she mean, 4 shoes? It was beginning to get dark in the airlock. It was becoming harder to see May and Bobby. They were pantomiming something else, but I didn't get it. They began to feel distant to me, distant and trivial. I was without energy and without care. 2 shoes, 4 shoes, and then I got it. I turned my back to Charlie, leaned against him and said, "Put your hands around my neck." He did, and I grabbed his legs. He lifted his feet off the floor. Instantly, the door hissed shut. That was it, I thought. The blowers began to blast down on us. The air rapidly cleared. I strained to hold Charlie up, and I managed until I saw the second set of doors unlocked and slid open. May and Bobby hurried into the airlock, and I just fell down. Charlie landed on top of me. I think it was Bobby who dragged him off me. I'm not sure. From that point on, I don't remember much at all.